repeat our previous conversations, since most conversations in our everyday lives end up too fast. Usually everybody gets one round of comments around the table and that's it, conversation stops there, which is a shame because there's always a lot that remains unsaid or unexplored. So instead of that, we'll continue where we left off last time. Let's say I will try to paraphrase, some memorable quotes and ideas, and then we can follow on from there.
From Banja Luka.
From Banja Luka, let's say. Okay. So if we start by introducing your next project, then everything that we will say will imperatively be filtered through that idea. It will bounce off that idea or will be concluded through that idea. But since we did it, and then if we end with introducing your next project, then we will have a feeling again of something being unsaid or unexplored. So let's introduce it right away. Let's say that you are making your next project, your next documentary project called Untitled, which is a film without a name and a film without a theme. And I am making my next documentary project about nothing.
That's actually how we met. We met in Czech Republic, and he approached me when I had a talk like this, and I introduced this project, and he said, I'm doing something quite similar, which maybe is not that similar because I'm doing a film without a theme, and he actually has a theme, and the theme is nothing. So in a slightly provocative way, we said we are talking about nothing, and we're talking about nothing in that respect, that like the world of documentary or even of art or of a reportage in our times is totally obsessed with theme and issue, and we both arrived at a point where we don't want that anymore. I don't know, I mean, since he has a theme which is nothing, it's a little different, but I sort of want to rid myself totally of that concept that I go out in the world to explore a theme thoroughly, in that sense that I say, I want to say something about the human rights situation in, I don't know, northern Kosovo, whatever that might be. So actually this sort of getting rid of a theme is like for me the total challenge of documentary filmmaking, in a sense that I expose myself to what's happening in the world in a more thoroughly way than having a theme.
You said last time, and I might be quoting or I might be paraphrasing you, but you said last time that the themes are the enemies of documentaries because they make you close to reality. They make us close to reality.
No, I actually, what I really do mean is that if you have a theme, you already have some vision of it. You go out in the world and you try to prove something about things. You try to go out there and say the world is like that in a way what is preconceived. And I think the like real goal for a documentary filmmaker should be an almost total openness to what he finds in reality. Because with film or with literature or all art, you can prove anything. You can say it's like two people with different opinions on the same theme can go out there and prove it. If I say the situation in this country is like this, and I have a preconception about it, I can, with my skills as a filmmaker, prove it. Like if you know my last film, it's on prostitution. If I would go out there and say prostitution is something really bad, I could, with the skills of a documentary filmmaker, go there and prove that prostitution is something thoroughly bad for humankind, for all the girls who do it, for all the Johns who take part in it, and I could, and a documentary filmmaker with the same skills and a different opinion could also prove the same opposite thing. Because you can always go there and make people sort of understand what you feel and understand what you want to say, and in the end the film would sort of prove that. But if you put this kind of preconceptions aside, then it gets very interesting, because then you are challenged by the reality of things, and that's what documentary filmmaking could or can be if you're open to a real situation that is not like dominated by your ideology or by your opinion.
Or judgment.
Or judgment.
But such documentaries are actually exceptions.
Are they?
Unfortunately, I think so. Most and more, in order to get a documentary produced, financiers require a very explicit, almost storyboarded explanation of your film and of your intentions even. So it takes someone with a serious pedigree, like you, for example, or someone who writes very creative proposals, like me, maybe, to convince them to let us play with no themes or with open filmmaking, as you say.
I like the word pedigree because we have a dog food in Europe that's called pedigree. And I never knew what pedigree means. Like a couple of months ago, American. I'm not a dog. But pedigree means Stammbaum, no? That,
Does it?
yeah. It means when your history.
Yeah.
But in terms of a dog, it means that you are a good breed. But I see myself rather as a street dog.
Okay, with
so my pedigree
with some
really
quality
lousy.
mileage. Yeah. Okay.
It's
Okay.
really
Okay.
lousy. I have a lot of fleas, and I'm a really ugly little street dog.
Okay, let's say with a quality background, let's say with a quality filmography, or with an established parcours. Yeah. Okay, so you were talking about looking for places where open filmmaking is possible. When in your last films, you would usually approach one theme and then illustrate it from 7 different angles in several parts of the world. You've kind of did the full circle. You've shown that. In the next film, you will try not to have a theme and try to be led by your curiosity, intuition, and by whatever happens in front of you. The similarities. One of the similarities, the continuing line in your process, would be the idea of finding places where, as you say, open filmmaking is possible. In the sense that even in your previous film, you could have chosen many locations for to illustrate your theme, but you always insist on certain locations where you can express yourself openly with cinematographic language. Are you looking for such locations also in the next film?
You open up some quite complex thoughts at the moment, because on one thing I think locations where you can visually show things are very important. And we're talking about this openness, but on the other hand, filmmaking also has to do with a lot of preciseness that you have to have. So you can even be precise without being opinionated. And today we have a very unique situation, because at the moment when film equipment in film history was very hard to get, filmmakers would like thrive for artistic value. They would thrive for an openness of how they approach the world. And today we are sort of in this very strange situation where you have like what you call democratic tools, like filmmaking equipment that is available to everybody. Like she has this little camera, important documentaries could be shot with this. If this is a Nikon or a Canon, you can also just shoot a film with that. You can go out and shoot. So it is actually quite democratic in terms of what it used to be. On the other hand, when I travel the circuit sometimes in the last year, I've been to many film festivals. I've never seen the situation in documentary filmmaking being so restricted and so square. So I sometimes think that it's almost like a self-censorship, because my film has to have some value, it has to have some opinion, it has to have some new world spirit or whatever. And many of the times I don't have the feeling that filmmaking is considered to be an art anymore. So we have this strange, with the democratization of the whole subject, also that a lot of different forms come in. So we don't know anymore. Is documentary filmmaking a reportage? Is it a career step? Is it something for television? Or is it a true expression of art? And that's sort of what I'm missing, that people feel, you know, I'm independent, I can take this kind of camera, I can show the world in any which way I want, not using it as a tool. And that's why I think we both come to a solution at the moment where we say, let's take the greatest challenge or also the greatest restriction and make a film about nothing. But, you know, the places are everywhere. Even this room is a place. We could make a film here. If we take Buñuel serious and if we don't let the people here leave the room for a specific period of time, we could make a very interesting movie without saying, you know, this is probably the Zagreb intellectual crowd. What will come out of that? Yeah. So if you said, just let's take these people as humans and let's make the documentary that's valid here, that's a very big challenge, just inside this room. You don't have to go far.
But
sometimes you have to go far.
But then again, we should not be making judgments about them also.
Yeah, but I say, if you make judgments, you say, well, this will probably be the peak of intellectual people thinking about documentary. Otherwise, they wouldn't come here and sort of sacrifice their afternoon to the boredom of hearing about nothing. So they must have a reason. To find out about that reason would be the simplest and most adequate challenge of doing a documentary film.
But also choosing to make precise images. Your people often say, "Oh, your images the images in your film are beautiful, aesthetically beautiful. Or you show how that, you know, slaughtering cows in Nigeria, or you know." Mining sulfur, picking up sulfur by hand is beautiful. You rather choose the word precise.
No, I like the beauty.
Yeah.
I mean, in that way, I think Plato is very right. Beauty is the splendor of truth. I mean, if we find something, I mean, here it would be really hard. This is, in terms of beauty, this is challenging. We can only rely on the people. Besides that, we have 2 bean bags, 3 bean bags, 2 chairs, and a plain room. That's even worse than a Nigerian slaughterhouse. That's in terms of cinematography a real challenge. So you could only rely on faces, of inner beauty, of stories. So every place has its rules, and the rules of this place are pretty harsh.
You mentioned earlier that your our new films are the results of the failures of our previous films. Because art is about failing. Art is a consistent series. Failure is imminent to artistic creation because the end result is never as good or as exact as we wanted it to be. So we learn from our previous failures, and in the next films we tend to correct or expand or follow up on that. In that sense, it gets easier and easier to make your fifth, sixth, seventh, or eighth film rather than the first or second.
But innocence is also nice. I mean, if you look at life, also at the moment where you do things innocent, even if they are then turn out to be wrong or harmful to your soul, the innocence is a beauty. It's also a beauty on the screen. That's why you sometimes watch your first films with a pleasure you never had, because you were so innocent about it. It's like with life, that you like it gets narrower and narrower because you already made your mistakes.
No, I'm saying it's fine for us. It's fine for people who have made their fifth or seventh film and really to kind of look back at it. But it's that much more difficult for people who are about to make their first film, let's say, or second. Is it?
No, because if you're serious about that, you really have to get yourself dirty. I mean, if you're not willing to get yourself dirty, especially if you're a documentary filmmaker, and go out in the world and challenge yourself and meet up with people and share their lives and share their sorrows and pleasures, which is harsh sometimes. I mean, I had a boy sitting in one of my films in Berkeley, and he was almost crying and said, how can you show that? How can you live with that? I could never go out in the world to see it that way. And I say, yeah, stay home. I mean, if you can't. For me, the greatest horror was to sort of grow up in a small city and to feel the boredom of middle class environment. So there's a reason why I went out to the world to experience that, because I couldn't stand that. If I could have stood that, I'd have a nice life with a car or two cars and a family, and I'd probably be divorced and in my second marriage. But otherwise I go out and do something else. So get yourself dirty is really the right solution. I mean, as nice it is to see the innocence of how you looked at the world when you did your first film, and it is never to be repaired, because the innocence doesn't come back. You get bitter, you got harsh, you get more precise, your films get better, but it doesn't mean that they are better.
So we continue with the stray dog metaphor.
Yes, yeah, we can do that.
Yeah. But a lot of documentary filmmakers, especially the ones which are academically trained in the sense where documentary is only one subject in their 4-year curriculum, are stopping short of getting dirty. Stopping short. I had
maybe they're not even stopping short of getting dirty. They follow only the emotional quality of things. And we have like today some sort of a shrine of emotionalism. If somebody cries in a movie, everybody thinks it's emotional. What's left cinema is intelligence. I mean, why do you choose a subject like nothing? Because you're a very intelligent person and you want to think about the world. But today everybody thinks if we touch the heart of people because on the screen something happens that's emotional in a sense that it also touches you emotional, that's the end of things. That's why we all have documentaries that are 90% victim movies.
Victimocratic.
Yeah, it's victims. Like people go out who are not even victims, and search for the victim of prostitution, for the victim of work, for this kind of victim. But where did all the intellectual people go who think about the world? Either they write only books, or I have the feeling they program computer games, because nowadays computer games seem to me more intelligent than most of the things I see in documentary filmmaking. So maybe I rather play Civilization than watch the 3,900 movie about this and that, about a hobo in Zagreb who, I don't know, who says, I'm a hobo, I live on the street, the world is unjust, big fucking news.
How is that related or influenced by the general feeling of crisis, or the perceived feeling of crisis in political and economical in which we live in?
Maybe the crisis is a chance, because this crisis is absolutely not to be understood. Do you understand it?
I see it being abused a lot of the times, and I see a lot of the films being made as a response to this crisis, and being made in such a discourse, in such a savior discourse. You know, let's give like a positive, you know, a happy ending thing, or let's show one example of hope, and that's enough. You know, I made this this listing of archetypes of documentary genres, and one of them is called gospel docs, meaning musical documentaries in which you know, music has the power to change the world. You know, you have one Israeli and one Palestinian cellist playing together, and that's it. You know, the whole movie is based, and in the end they play together, and that's it. Another genre is sports in minefields, in which, you know, sports has the same function. You know, if you make people play together, that's it. But we're missing the complexity of reality. And documentaries are tending to become more and more simplistic. And when you see the selection of the Amsterdam Festival this year, where you will be the jury, you can see from the titles that the titles already the titles are having this sensationalist, simplistic, you know, catchy sentence. So you can imagine that synopsis of these films will also have a similarly simplistic, you know, crowd-pleasing easiness and the discourse of these films as well. And where is complexity in this?
To put it in a way, we always said when times get bad, comedies come up. So maybe these kind of documentaries that are in a way there to be the like to change the world, I would call that so naive in terms of they are almost like comedies of documentary, because if you think, you take a little camera, show your a film festival crowd your film that will change the world, is so profoundly naive that it's a waste of time for both sides. If you go out there and said, my film will change this and this surrounding, and now people will stop to drive cars or shoot guns because I made this film, it's a waste of time. There's so much to explore in terms of like who we are, what is a human condition, why do people shoot guns?
The beauty of the crisis, basically.
The crisis, why don't we understand the crisis? Would be a such way more valid theme that how are we activists to change the world? Because if you're an activist to change the world, go out, be an activist and leave your camera please at home, because this will only end up in the worst film we've ever seen. Because it's a waste of money, energy and time. Because a film has only 90 minutes, and in these 90 minutes there's things to explore about nothing, to explore about the human soul, to explore about anything. But if somebody comes here and says, we're making a movie that there is too many cars in this world, or that the Arctic ice is melting, it's a waste of time.
might as well do some, policy lobbying to change.
Even like you said yesterday to me, we were already talking, to make a film about chess is more interesting because it's a very complex way of thinking. Even if somebody, if you can make somebody understand about chess, that would be an enormous thing, you know? Like Austrian filmmaker, experimental filmmaker said once that films are so crucially difficult because if you make a film about how to sail the world in a sailing boat, you will bore the people who will know about how to sail the world on a sailing boat, and the people who don't know anything about it will not understand it if you get too complex. So to get in that middle way always ends up to get emotional. If somebody cries because his sailboat is sinking, then you think it's a valid movie. As instead, to make people understand complex ways of how we function as human beings is very, very difficult, because then again, filmmaking is very difficult because it has to be so reduced, it has to be so simplistic. A writer who writes a book can write more on 2 pages than you can show in 90 minutes. Because if you get as complex in the way of thinking that you do as a writer, you overboard the concept of filmmaking, because filmmaking is very slow in its argumentation, because it uses visual effects, and if you overboard it in the way that you also only count on what's being said in a movie, then you're not in the terrain of real filmmaking, because there's so many films when you close your eyes, nothing is lost. That's sort of the penalty. That's the worst you can make as a film. You sit there, you close your eyes, the film is the same, then it's done. Why did you do it? It's the art of imagery, and it's the art also of sound versus or combined with imagery, and sort of it's almost sad because like the sync sound reduced the film again, because at the moment when there was no sync sound, they were always having this idea, how can we create a sound against the image, with the image, to heighten the image. Now you have this like torture or a heavy stone of realism, that this sound has to be realistic, and now you have all these methods of how to create the most wonderful sound, but you're like tortured by this kind of realism. Documentary is tortured by realism.
and by hyperrealism in a Hollywood way, in the sense that you're showing something, you're saying that you're going to show it, you're showing it, you underline it with music, and you build everything towards that type of reading, which is very satisfactory for the audience, because everyone will see it coming and okay, good, I made the right assumption, let's say.
But it's also like, it's almost like a built-up agreement between the audience, what they learned from cinema through history of cinema, and what they take for granted as being realistic. I always have this thing that I say about interviews, which I think explains it the best. Because interview is thought to be the most reliable tool of documentary filmmaking. But if you look close at it, what is an interview? An interview is me in a chair talking to a person that you don't see. What is realistic about that? That's the most contrived setup situation in the world. Not even a film about ancient Romans is so far away from reality that if I nail a person to a chair and say, tell me about your grandma and how she died, nobody would sit here and do that. But we have this agreement that this is objective reality, that this we buy. We don't buy if we set up that somebody drinks a beer for the second time in front of the camera, but we buy a totally contrived situation, because that is sort of a setup that we agreed to. Our fathers agreed to, our grandfathers agreed to, and it's called the interview. And it's sort of something sacred. And I think it's the total enemy of documentary filmmaking.
But again, you get there are many ways in which you can provoke the opposite of interviews, which is some kind of spontaneous reaction on screen, where people would most of the time either be amazed by the spontaneity of the situation, or the authenticity, or they might have suspicions about the truthfulness of the situation. How do you, which tricks do you use, which tactics do you use to film some scenes which are natural, which are unpredictable, especially working on film, which is incredibly expensive to keep running in terms of cost per
I
second,
think that's
frame.
sort of what documentary filmmaking should achieve, in a way that you put yourself in situations where you can film the unexpected, the real, the authentic, but still don't forget that that's not the end of things. Just because it's authentic, it's not art. You still have to put yourself in a position where you show the authentic. It's not because, you know, like if you would go to a war and people are killing each other and you just do like this, it's in a way nothing. Also, it's very authentic. But if you create the feeling that comes across by feeling this war, then you can start calling yourself a filmmaker. That's sort of the task in that situation is very, very high. And that's why I also think that ideology sometimes is in the way of things, but when people are there at the moment where it counts, then even if they have this or that ideology, they can take things that are so valuable because we can never see them again. Like my favorite example is the famous documentary filmmaker Joris Evans made a film about the Cultural Revolution. It's 12 hours long, and it shows how the Cultural Revolution worked in China with the approval of Mao. And everybody like dumps this film and says, well, this bad man, he was for the Cultural Revolution. He didn't know better at the moment, but still, he got the only valuable images of times of the 20th century that were so unexplainable. It were so unexplainable because when you hear about the Cultural Revolution, you think this is a very interesting attempt. The very interesting attempt was one of the attempts that ended in one of the biggest atrocities. But still, he was there. He showed how a pharmacy worked. He showed how a school worked. And he did it filtered, but the reality is there. Even Leni Riefenstahl, she was actually there when the thing happened. And what she captured on film is, in a sense of documentary, way more valuable than any films trashing the Nazi regime afterwards, because they were not there. They were not there to show the immediate thing. So I think it's not even that relevant if you're for or against, but if you're there at the moment, and if you create the thing at the moment.
In Horse Glory, it was very difficult, I imagine, to film some scenes to make the protagonists play natural. But still, you achieved to film some shots which you could never fake in front of the camera. But you could anticipate them in some ways, like the scene of where the mother is beating the the daughter in Bangladesh, for example.
We could explain that within this room. If
Yeah.
like you have lice,
Mhm.
yeah, and I would do an interview with you, I would ask me to sit with you and pick the lice. Then we have a very intimate situation. And we talk about things. If we do it this way, there's only a wall behind us. Yeah? If we just turn around and I put the camera here and I would do the licing like that, we have all these people behind us and they can react. So this simple example shows what filmmaking is about. You have to make these kind of choices. You have to make the choice, do I film in this direction or do I film in that direction? Do I let the background open so something can happen, or do I close the background so nothing can happen and the people will say what I want them to say? So that sounds almost silly, you know, because it's so easy. But these decisions define a good film from a not good film. If you give reality the chance, then something can happen.
But you also, before you do that, you have to decide on the moment of when mothers are picking lice from the hair of their daughters, and that's one of those moments where time stops, barriers stop, they stop thinking about you. After it's repetitive, it's almost mantric in a way, and then you just have to be ready and be positioned in the right way and in the right mood to catch whatever happens in the background or between the two of them.
But your answer is again in the room, because we too are forced to talk.
Yeah.
Yeah? So now comes in the director of a film which portrays the room. So he will pick us as the one to talk, because we talk. And he can enforce people, like we could now too, to come and ask questions, or he cannot. And then he has two choices. He can separate us in the room, he can combine us in the room, he can say move a little like this or like that, but the whole setup is clear. We talk, they don't. Unless he says, please talk. Or they get so angry with what we say that they overrule the guy who makes the film here and they talk. And that's when reality kicks in. So now I can say, please, please, come in, answer, or ask us questions, or they do it by themselves. But you have to make sort of the little decisions that it happens. But it's always the same. It's always a room like this. It's a brothel like this. It's a swimming pool like this. It's a subway like this. You always have to see what is the scheme of things. How does it work? How will you do it with nothing? Will you show places where there is nothing? You will not. Will you?
I have 72 pages of point form
Tell me
criteria.
one. Tell me one situation where there is nothing.
Yeah, you asked me to bring photos, so we can play with photos, but it's more, yeah, I will be working with several DPs. I'm staying at home and they're working in different parts of the world. And in 5 stages. And in the first stage, I give them, you know, carte blanche for filming documentary nothingness, in whichever way they perceive it. And gradually I give them more and more instructions. But
instruct me.
I want so the first one.
I want to film nothing for you.
So I would ask you to film for me either a documentary, so no setup of any kind, so a documentary image which represents some aspect of nothingness. That's one criteria. The second one is an image that could be filmed from the point of view of nothingness. If nothingness could see, what would it see? And the third one would be what we talked about, any kind of image which has in itself a feeling of nothingness. And such images exist, and I was browsing, I told you, I was browsing through my 10 years of festival travels, and looking for these unimportant photos, you know, at the bottom of the folder, and I would find images like this, you know, and they strike you. It's like, these images breeds with nothingness. So, so that would be the first.
I would film a living room with a Sunday Formula One sound. I have this feeling when I was in my home and I heard my father watching the Formula One. It is this sound where you think like a army of bees is coming or something, and nobody knows what to do because it's Sunday afternoon. You can either kill yourself or watch Formula One. So that would be an image I would keep.
Great. Great. Then I don't even need to bother with sound, because usually I'm counting on people to send images, and then I would add in various Formula Ones, you know, just because my advantage in this is that I can always say nobody knows what nothing feels, how nothing speaks, and what nothing sees. So, and what nothing hears. So I can completely break every rule in documentary filmmaking. I can play with sound in any way I want. I could have added Formula One sound, even if you sent me the image of that living room mute, right? So in that sense, I have like an incredible amount of possibilities to play with, both with images, sound, visions. I can play with totally blurry images. There's a fantastic art of intentionally out of focus photography, and fully out of focus, and creatively out of focus. There's an art. I really discovered the term minimal photography. Minimal photography would be this screen with this little blank thing at the corner. But this blank thing in the corner would kind of really fill up the entire screen. Minimal photography, blurry pictures, decomposed pictures. Completely.
How would we do it in the room here? I would suggest that we tell people there is a film to be shown, and we put a transparent screen and the camera behind it, and for half an hour there's only white light projected to the screen, and we film what people do.
Or we would kind of fake a projector failure, and then let them get up and let them.
No, that's
play.
a reason again. But if they really see nothing,
Yeah.
and there's even sort of the transparency that light is coming towards the screen, but it's only white light, then they wouldn't know if it's a film or if it's nothing.
Yeah, if we just turn on the projector.
And how many would stay for how long? What's your guess?
Well, in my film, and talking about, coming back to what we were saying before, I'm trying to make an elitistically populistic film, in the sense that, the film could be read by anyone and enjoyed by anyone, and at the same time, if you want to stop and make like a PhD thesis on one shot, you could do it. And my films, previous one that you've seen, and this one will be very rich in a sequence of very complex and rich shots. And in that sense, they will, they will always be, your head will always be full, and it will be full with images, it will be full with sound, and it will be full by whatever you invest in the film. And I'm counting a lot. My film will work to the extent in which people will be ready to believe that they are watching a documentary about nothing, or that they are hearing nothingness speaking to them in voiceover.
I give you 3 examples of modern television, which I think are disturbing and interesting. One example is on Euro News. Does that exist? or Euronews, there is a little spot, it's 5 minutes long, it's called No Comment, and they show news material that they don't comment. And it's like a real revelation, because everything in modern television is commented. And so this is like the real opposite of it, but intentionally. But still, people who sap into that, and they are not used to it, they're totally, what is this? What do I see? Why is there Palestinians throwing stones? Are these Palestinians? What do I see? So with a little twist of that, the disturbance is very big. The second one is that we have a thing where they show train rides through all of Europe. And sometimes when I cannot sleep, I switch into that, and it gets totally exciting. You're driving through all of South Tyrol for hours, and you just see a train.
In Scandinavia, they're doing with cruises along the
and you
North
get
Sea.
totally fascinated because you're denied normally this kind of imagery. You're denied. It's like when you watch out of a train that's past moving through a landscape, you get so happy sometimes because you can watch something in reality, and filmmaking denies you that because they are so afraid of void. I mean, I don't want to bore people. I want to make thrilling movies, but thrill can also come out of that. And the third thing in television that I think is very interesting is like the comments for people who don't see. Like if you turn on this kind of sound, which you can at a football game, how it's commented, or when they comment a film like that, they say, well, now he's taking the beer and it makes dum, and they make all these kind of sounds. It gets very absurd in a way where you watch the film completely different because you start to hear things that you normally would just take for granted.
There are also specialized cinemas now for blind people, in which specially trained commentators are explaining what's happening on screen to and at the same time translating what's being told. Basically, they're commenting live a fiction film, including the images.
That would be actually very good for documentary, because finally the people would run away from the cinema if they don't like add their own thoughts with what's on the screen. Because if purely it is what's on the screen, they would run out, you know, because it's so simplistic, you know. You see now who's talking about his childhood, and now he starts crying because his dog is dead. They would all go away. But because it's not commented, they think there must be something behind the screen.
You said at one point that filmmaking is about limiting yourself to a certain vision. When you make a film without a team, do you still have that vision, that kind of aesthetical feeling, or when that you have in the back of your mind when you're testing? Basically, you will be traveling from Vienna to Vienna around the world in 100 countries, hopefully. You may. But you expect to film whatever you meet, whatever you see along the way that interests you, that strikes you, and then say, okay, this is what I want to film. If we agree, if we say that you don't have in mind what you're going to film, do you have in mind how you're going to film it, or you're going to again decide on the?
This is like a screen. You need a sentence here, and you need a sentence there. Otherwise, you don't know what's out. It's not so important that you know what's in. It's very important that you know what's out. Like you could say, I don't want to see trees. So that would be a concept. So for my film, I would say, I start here with Milton, who said, Paradise Lost. And I end here with an experimental filmmaker from the US who said, "Paradise not yet lost." So 2 sentences like that are enough, because you need a frame. Otherwise you're lost. You're lost in nothingness. You have to say, in the middle, you could call it the jungle of Eden, or whatever you want to see of the world, but you have to go in that kind of vision, otherwise you will get totally irrelevant.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working with these type of quotes. I have the second stage in my communication with the DPs is that I will be sending them about 100 quotes about nothingness, which they should feel inspired by to film more images of nothingness. So, but there's 100 of them. You know, there's not one of them. And my question was more related to limiting yourself to a certain way of filming. I have a problem that I can go through dozens and dozens and dozens different ways of filming nothingness. What about you?
No, I'm over 50 years old, so I know my frame. I know it very well, intentionally or intellectually, how I just said, but I know my frame. I can look through a camera in despair. I look through a camera in despair when there is nothing. But if there is the beauty of nothing, I can see it. And it's a daily fight. It's like where to put your camera, you know? It's like there is not very many relevant points, to come back to this room, where you can make a relevant picture of what's happening in that room. Maybe it's only one. Sometimes it's 2. And it must not be right for everybody. Other people can make other relevant pictures. But normally I see the convention of pictures. You can make, you know, this wide shot, the 2 of us sitting and everybody here, and then cut us like this, and then like this, how you've been taught in film school how it works. But then again, you have to challenge yourself to find a relevant image, because that's what filmmaking is about. And then that way it hurts, because normally when you put up a camera, there is nothing. You see nothing. Like, it was very interesting. At one point when I was filming in India, my cameraman said to me, I only see the button of the shirt of the first kid that stands in front of the camera. Because whenever we put up a camera, 500 kids come running. And I said at one point, so film it. Maybe it's a relevant picture. But maybe you have to also fight for it. Sometimes images for film come very easily in documentary filmmaking because they just happen. But that's very rare, because it's so easy to get irrelevant. But on the other hand, when you're fighting too hard to get relevant, you get it over-constructed. So you have to find a way to let it flow and let it go, but still be precise. There's no other way to describe it, because that's like an everyday fight you have to put up. It's not so easy. And it's not by trick shots. It's not if you put the camera here and you see all through the green of the bottle. It's nothing, because it looks fancy, but it doesn't tell shit, you know? And sometimes the most easy thing would be that I put the camera in front of all these people, but then I regroup them a little. And I could say, well, the red of your shirt here doesn't fit. Can you take it off? You alter it a little, and then it feels right for you, and that's good. Just do what you must do, but do it well.
I only started filming last week, actually, in this crazy hotel on the border, France and Spain. But I also, just to prepare some promo, this promo photo collage, I selected some photos from those festival trips that I feel could represent images of nothingness. So, I mean, we can ask if people have questions now, and then for the end of the conversation, just browse through them and make comments on these images, let's say.
But it's very interesting that you say film festival are a place of nothing.
That's
Where does that come from? In a way, for a filmmaker, it's understandable because film festivals are the loneliest places on earth because you have already done your failures and they are big on the screen.
no, I still see filmmaking as a tourism business. You know, I mean, for me, filmmaking has been a possibility to travel. In a way, and most of the I still get excited first by the location of the festival rather than the importance of the festival, let's say. So in that sense, I kept, and it's the first time I had a digital photo camera in hand. So this was, you know, I kept shooting, and without knowing, I was testing these. I was learning to take photography basically through practice, basically, because I never had any training in photography or cinematography or, you know, of any kind.
So you want to show a picture?
But let's, I mean,
is there any questions?
Any questions, comments?
I never had a masterclass without questions. No questions, so we show nothing, huh?
Let's be silent for a minute.
We have to turn down the light.
You know, full screen.
Just click the picture. So why is this a picture of nothing?
It entered into slideshow mode. Well, let's play it
If
as a
they're all
slideshow.
nothing, it's okay.
Yeah, let's play it as a slideshow then. And then you can make a general commentary about it.
Should we leave it at that?
No comment.
I mean, no. I mean, I could ask you if for you nothingness is the almost entire absence of people, without, I mean, not including Selma, because she was not invited.
There is a second part of the folder with people, but these.
No, there were people,
yeah.
but I mean, they were like the exception of the rule. Do we define nothingness when we're gone?
It's.
Well, I mean, there is people.
No. But I mean, it's one of the main problems I have in filming this, because most of it will be much easier to film without people. But then when there's so few people in the film, when they get, when you know, it's when they appear on film, they have much more impact, just because by contrast to this, you know, then you see a face or some kids or some old people or some Selma doing.
But it would be a relevant question if we left the planet, is there nothing?
If there's no one to observe.
There's still our traces. We know there's only allowed to drive 40 kilometers. He looks like in a moment of happiness. There's always traces.
Well,
It's actually, the task is so enormous because the task of nothingness is not to be conquered really.
well,
Because you always have this like strong drive to interpret.
But that's why, I mean, the whole film will be voiced over by nothingness. So nothingness will speak.
Is it male or female?
Yeah, no, but I'm much more comfortable with male.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
A male
because
is
I never-
nothing.
That you could read that way also. I mean, I just somehow feel more natural to give it that voice, because much of the film will play also with this double personality of the narrator. The narrator will be nothingness, maybe, or it will be me, the author, maybe, or it may be the inner voice of the audience, maybe, you know. But it will be written in such a way that
You would dare to write the inner voice of your audience?
well, I would dare to suggest it, yeah. But to suggest it and then pull it out, you know, just to say this is the inner, you know, and then pull it out, and then it can stay as an idea in the back of their mind. So in that sense, I'm trying to make, let's say, a three-in-one narration, in which people could really. Let's look up these.
Turn the light down again.
So there will be a completely different sound, a lot of music or no music, or just music like breaking in at moments. There will be who knows what kind of sound effects, who knows what kind of how much narration into it. I mean, you said that my last film was too much in a row, let's say, without breaks. But the idea is that these images should somehow represent some kind of nothingness for everyone. Should
That's a good one. That's us here.
yeah.
Show is over.
Yeah.
People should make their own show. Yeah, football is also good.
Especially, you know, with
When my team
smoking a
plays, I
joint, you
always
know,
feel like it's nothing. I should die.
That's my kid. That's my kid from.
Selma and Boris are online.
See, talking about decomposed, I don't know why I took this shot 6 years ago like that.
Maybe you were drunk.
In the middle of Armenia, yes, probably. But this one I thought would be.
That's not nothing. That's curiosity. That's like, what the fuck is this guy doing here?
Well, that's what I'm trying to suggest in the film. And nothingness in the film will be trying to suggest that it can also have some a positive role in your lives, either as the void that we fear, either as curiosity, either as possibility. And these images are
I-
only,
I-
are only
I
here
wonder
to
if
kind
you-
of to hypnotize you while you listen to the to the narration, basically.
It would be actually interesting if you teach a class on filmmaking and you ask the people to go out there and shoot nothing what they come home with. Because sometimes I have the feeling when I give out a lecture like that and I say, film something that interests you out there in like the surrounding of 3 blocks.
We can ask
They
these,
come
peop-
up-
these people.
They come home with something.
Yeah.
Would it be different than if you say come home with nothing?
Well, I mean, again,
Is it more challenging? I mean, is it more challenging for you as a filmmaker to film nothing than something?
well, right now, yes, this is pure intellectual pleasure. I have no philosophical, spiritual, existential reasons to make a documentary about nothing. It's a pure game for me. And the more I think about it, the more I find personal, inside motivations to do it. But the original idea was to work with 7 top cinematographers for 7 parts of the world, who have all accepted to work in the project. But it's too expensive right now to set it up, or too complicated to set it up. They would do it for free, but I don't want to kind of start the film in this way. So for the teaser, I'm basically asking friends that I met at festivals, and even my former students, to send me, just like I told you, send me one shot of nothingness, either one aspect of nothingness, something from the point of view of nothingness, or a feeling of nothingness. And these are the shots that I was selecting from my own kind of festival travels, because I don't travel otherwise except through festivals. To answer your question about nothingness and festivals, Bucharest, incredible. The whole downtown is just scattered. So it's great to watch these for the second time, basically, because I only selected these 2 days ago, and
Is it different to watch it with people?
it's different to watch it this close. It's different to watch it to this pixelated screen, and it's different to watch it because there used to be some order on my computer, and then here it just plays it alphabetically, and then it's a completely new story. But I like it. For me, I mean, there's not maybe. Out of the 100 photographs, there's maybe 5 or 10 that I'm ashamed of right now, let's say, and like half of them.
But shame is always something very creative, no?
Well,
If I watch something I've
Yeah.
done and I feel ashamed, then I know there is something hidden there,
well,
even in the good or in the bad.
but the problem is that I'm doing a very, very pretentious thing by wanting to do a documentary about nothingness. So I have to be either very, very good or very, very humble.
So what's your choice?
I try to be
You try to be good.
humble.
That sounds
No,
bad.
I try to I try to find a solution here, and I think it's a good. I'll be playing these photos, and they'll be growing in numbers, and I will play them on the wall in my room forever, and try to find.
But talking to our audience, I think
Yeah.
it's a very interesting situation that's like often when I'm asked how do you find things and how do you come to a solution for filming, this is a very good process because you find out what's relevant and what's irrelevant. And it's very hard to hit these points where things get relevant, even relevant without explanation. And like with challenging ourselves with the theme of nothingness, the relevance sort of gets even more important. Because like each of these pictures that you show us also can have a context. They can have a theme or they have no theme. This can be about, you know, happiness on the sea, but it also can be about the void, and it can be about the empty moment. Like to find out what is that, what then counts on the screen for nothingness. It's a very, very complex process, and also an emotional one, I guess.
Yeah, and also these images have a great ricochet effect. You know, I'm watching this and I think, and then suddenly one idea from 3 years ago comes to my mind, or from 10 books ago, or from, or it connects to another idea. So that's why I'm saying the people who are sending me material, basically don't send me really, I mean, the things don't be, don't restrict yourself, because anything that you send me can inspire something else by ricochet, or it can save me like 2 hours of waiting for the sunset, for the sunrise, and setting up some shots, and you know. If
Very interesting is also why can you not, like in most films, feature or documentary films, the bad is more interesting than the good. The ugliness is more interesting than the beauty. Even the beauty in the ugliness is more interesting than the beauty. Like, why can you not make a relevant picture of a sunset? Because it's spoiled. You know, like you can go to a shop around the corner here, and there is a little stand with a guy with the most expensive equipment in the most relevant moments of sunset has photographed the sunset. So the sunset in our ways of thinking of beauty is absolutely and totally dead. Like, I think it would be like one of the most challenging situations if you go out and say, how can we film a relevant sunset so people get touched by it in the reality of a movie theater? Because your sunset can be so wonderful if you go out there as a human being and you're sad, or you're in love, or you connect this with a poem you just read, or a line you have just written, with anything. Even the wind that you feel can be wonderful. But a sunset in a movie always sucks. It's always secondhand. It's never beautiful. It shows you more about the lens that you took the sunset with than the sunset itself. It's sort of one of the biggest challenges of a filmmaker to film a relevant sunset, because it's almost impossible. But if you go to, as you just said, to Bulgaria and film a couple of cables, or a couple of messed up living situations that the Roma did there, and with some children playing there, you say, wow, I've never seen that, that's wild, what's that? You know, so that's like the scissors we live in as filmmakers, to also conceive beauty. I mean, that is pretty much the opposite of nothing, because that looks like pretty much those people were in love, and maybe they would have good sex in the evening, or even on this roof. So you already have a story going, or he shouldn't burn his fingers with his cigarette. You have a story going. But with the sunset, you're probably the closest to nothingness, because it's not depictable. It's not. You always see so many references in your head that makes it impossible to enjoy a sunset on the screen. It could only make it good if the helicopters with Rambo come in front of the sunset, and then you know they're gonna destroy something. Then you can maybe enjoy the sunset, because it contradicts itself. It brings danger in.
I agree. I mean, I was filming the sunset without knowing. I kept asking myself, you know, sunsets and the open sea, what mixes the line between the horizon, that kind of blurs the horizon line. And then what about them? You know. So that was one of the lines in my notes.
like maybe nothingness is also that photography is totally dead. I mean, people come and they think their way of traveling is to go some places and photograph things where they will never ever again watch the photographs. I mean, people go to a zoo, yeah, and they photograph the tiger through bars. And what then? I always wonder, what then? How is their evening at home? They're gonna watch the out of focus photograph of the tiger, because of course the digital camera will have been focused on the bars and not the tiger. So they will delete this photograph, then they will save it, and the wife will say, leave me fucking alone with the tiger. I go there with my children myself. It's not, also they travel all the world, they go to the Forbidden City in China, they photograph it with 150 pictures, and nobody will watch it. That's also a sort of nothingness. The more we can photograph it, the more we don't watch it. That's also a lesson to us as filmmakers. We can photograph anything, and nobody will watch it. It's almost like a film festival. We show the films to each other that have the problems with filming the world.
The working title of my film is In Praise of Nothing, like in praise of folly, but it's in praise of nothing. So it can always be read as, you know, I didn't try to praise anything, basically. So there is not even nothingness, in a way. I mean, so what if this is not a picture of nothingness, in a way? I mean, I kind of hinted at that, but that's not what you get. But as long as you you get a different type of perception of reality from these images, from this music, from this sound or lack of sound, from this from this discourse and this narration, then it works. Even though it's not what I wanted or not what I intended, you know, I'm fine with that.
But maybe we're getting too eclectic and manneristic here. People want to film something. We are weirdos. If you want to film something, you have a very different approach. Or maybe the good lesson is that nothing is the most difficult thing to film if you want to film something.
I mean, basically, I could make a film from each of these images could be the skeleton of one scene in one film, or even an entire film, or even an entire location. But even by lining them up that fast, and so eclectically, it's a comment about nothingness in a way. I mean, jumping from
maybe you should learn from pornography, because pornography has the real hard task that it's very hard to film sex, because the actual act of sex is quite hidden for a camera. So you have to bend a lot and make the people do very strange things, so you can actually film sex in a pornographic way. So maybe that is with all themes that you have, that it's not very obvious where the things are. You know where they are, but how to put them on a screen is very, very difficult, and knows some skill also with nothingness. But
that's where narration comes in, and our two films will be very different, because I will always have the backup of narration to kind of spin my images, and you probably won't. I mean, you didn't have until now.
Let's see. Is there any questions? Don't be so difficult.
That's a statement, you know.
Yeah, that's a statement. They're giving back to us the arrogance of making films about nothing. Otherwise, we let you go. So there's nothing. So thank you for
light.
That's it. You're not satisfied.
I am. Let me find another. A last quote from you. Yeah, I'll just ask you. I'll see if somebody asks you from the I'll repeat questions from the audience from previous sessions, and I'll see if you will have the same answers. What, Mr. Glawogger, what is more important for you? The filmmaker, the story, or the money?
I answered that.
Vanya, look.
Well, there is probably...
You choose. I'll help you. You choose 2 out of 3. So filmmaker. What's behind a good film? The filmmaker, the story, or the money?
The filmmaker and the money.
That's the correct answer.
Thank you. That's like in a game show we had like in the 70s where they said the candidate has 100 points.
You said once, or I wrote it like this, but I don't remember in which context, but I like it. You said, every time I overestimate myself.
Yeah, I hopefully do so, otherwise I would go nowhere. I mean, yeah, you have to overestimate yourself because you have to gather all your courage to put something on the screen that people watch. Like you know it now. You will see your images so much different when they are watched by 50 people than you see them at home, because at home you give them your own meaning, you give them your emotions, and suddenly you can feel that it's shared by emotions. Like when I do test screenings of my films, my distributors and producers always want to hand out papers with questions. I say that it's of no avail. I have to sit in the middle of people while watching the film, and I will know everything because I will suffer like a pig, because I see everything. I see when they take out their cell phones, I see when they text, I see when they move their butt from here to here. I can actually feel the aura of when a scene works or not. And what they write afterwards on a paper is already intellectualized, because there is no intellectualization when something is boring or not, when something catches you or not. And it gets dead silent and wonderful in the cinema when something you have done works. And the most pathetic thing is a filmmaker defending his work. Because if he starts to defending, he already knows he fucked up big time. You know? Or even if people are, you know, of a totally different intellectual status, they're either grabbed or not. And you succeed or not. And it's very difficult to make them shut up. You know, it's like in the sauna. When you do, how do you call this in English? The water on the hot stones. And all the people in the room talk about how bad their neighbors are, whatever. When it gets hot enough and challenging enough, they shut the fuck up. And that's when you succeed. More questions?
Karma in documentary, karma is the only thing that you cannot teach in documentary filmmaking.
You cannot teach filmmaking on the whole. You can only teach the tools. I mean, probably it's like really like driving a car. You can teach the clutch, you can teach the brakes, you can teach the gas, you can teach the steering wheel, but you probably cannot teach the very precise moment that you go into a curve and you fall out or not. You have to like go like this all the time. You have to challenge yourself and reality. How far can you go? In terms of documentary, how far can you go with reinventing scenes? How far can you go with constructing scenes? How far can you go with challenging the reality? Some journalists ask me always the same stupid questions. If like you come into a situation where a person is being shot, do you interfere or do you film? I think it's a totally irrelevant question, because the relevant question is, as a filmmaker, can you even come into a situation where a person is being shot? And if you come into a situation where a person is being shot, you as a human being will know what to do. And that has nothing to do with the morals you talk about. That has only to do with a situation that you cannot imagine. So actually the real challenge of a filmmaker is, how can you bring yourself in this world into the kind of situation where you can film something relevant? Like every war reporter has the same difficulties. Because if they say there is a war in Afghanistan, go and find it. Christiane Amanpour will not find it, because she is standing on the roof of the Hilton with a bulletproof vest and says the war is behind it, if it's true or not. But if you actually want to find this fucking war, then you have a real challenge. And your morality is a morality of a human being in any given moment. And you don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. Maybe I just stand there, film. Maybe I piss in my pants, maybe I save the guy, but the question is not to be answered unless you're there. And that's the most difficult thing.
And this is, I have this irrational feeling that this type of approach, this morality and basic human empathy and correctness is what provokes good documentary images. I mean, you are rewarded by some strike of luck by having fantastic thing happening in front of your camera.
Then let's go back to the sunset.
Yeah.
Maybe you are so fucking lucky that at the moment you want it, there will be the most dramatic clouds in front of it, and suddenly there come, I don't know, 52 Afghan fighter jets in front of the sunset, and you say, wow, Jesus Christ, I never thought of that, you know? But maybe not. Then you just film your sunset and drop it on the cutting room floor. It's nice there.
Yeah, but maybe, I mean, I like to believe that it was deserved, you know, and even if it was not, then it's a good trick, it's a good way to fool yourself.
So you believe in justice? Justice for your movie.
Serendipitous justice, yes.
Yeah. No, but actually you're right. If you don't believe in it, it will not happen. I mean, I still, you know, there's this film, it's a guilty pleasure of mine, a film with Kevin Costner. It's called The Field of Dreams. And in the Field of Dreams, Kevin Costner is standing in a cuckoo's field, and a voice from above tells him, if you build it, they will come. So, if you build it, they will come is sort of the best instruction for documentary filmmakers. Do something. Build a fucking baseball field in a cuckoo's field, and somebody will come. You know, you just cannot go anywhere and think, oh my God, this is difficult, what should I do here? How should I film it? Do I make an interview? Just stand there and wait. If you build it, they will come. That's it.